In today's Eye on Education, an exclusive interview with the superintendent of Boston Public Schools, Brenda Cassellius, has been in charge of 52,000 students' education and safety during the pandemic. The superintendent shared with our Paula Ebben how grateful she's been for the families in the Boston schools.
So Superintendent Cassellius, thank you for doing this. I have to ask, you were the Minnesota commissioner for years before you came to Boston in 2019. Did anything in your career prepare you for this last year?
Well, this has been a tough year on everybody, especially our families. And I want to first start by thanking our families and our teachers and all of our educators and school leaders and the entire team at BPS for the incredible great work that they've done. But we are learning on the go here, and I could never have imagined a pandemic, never.
What do you think emotionally you'll take with you from this experience of the last year?
Well, one thing I've been telling the staff is we are going to look back on this past year and realize how resilient we really are and how strong we are as a city. We pulled together for our children and their families, and it was just amazing to see the coming together. And so I think what I take away is that really anything's possible if we really work together around it.
So you're leading the biggest public school system in New England with over 52,000 students. How big of a problem do you think learning loss is going to be?
Well, I do think that it's going to be a problem, but it's really going to be in a couple of grades. So our early childhood grades are, I think, impacted the most because some parents just chose to take a year off and keep their children home. So we know that our youngest learners had a much harder time accessing remote. And then our older learners, you talk to the high school students and they tell you that they just had a hard time getting out of bed, and it was really tough for them and their mental health. So I think at the upper ends and at the lower ends we're going to see big problems, and even in the middle some students struggled, students with disabilities where we couldn't give them their services, and our students who have languages other than English as their first language. So we're going to really try to give them a boost this summer.
With children at home, how were teachers able to pick up on issues like learning disabilities?
Yeah, so they worked with their parents. And you know, people say parents are a child's first teacher. That was absolutely true this year, and I can't thank them enough for stepping up and pitching in and bridging that gap. One of the things that was a lesson we'll take is with the one-to-one technology, we found new ways of communicating with parents and really value their partnership, and I think we're going to take that into the next school year.
What have we learned from this that will be positive, that will change the way we educate children moving into the future? What
I think we've learned that's been positive is really about the family engagement. That has been the number one thing that has been nagging us for years in public education. Like, how do we get parents involved and how do we do it in a meaningful and authentic way? And this year I think we were able to capture that.
Sure.
So that's one. And then the other is the actual use of tools, and knowing that you don't have to be tied to a brick and mortar classroom to do education really brought out the creativity in our teachers, and they shared best practice and they worked together, and that was really remarkable to see.
Yeah. And do you think that in terms of the family engagement, for many families who might be worried about their immigration status, for instance, they view the school as a government building and they might be reticent to show up for a parent-teacher night or something. So you think that the remote learning piece allowed them to not only get a peek into their child's education, but also opened up this new line of communication?
Well, I do think it helped with the communication, but the biggest piece was we introduced a new technology called talking points that allowed us to communicate with them in their home language through text. And I think that was huge. And then we also invite them in by using interpretation and translation services. Another really huge learning under our new chair, Alex Oliver Davila. We really have put a lot more into our translation and interpretations this year.
Sure. Talking about this summer, which you touched upon a little bit, of course, the governor announced the $70 million in grants for summer programs, understanding that summer school really needs to be enhanced this year. What can parents expect? What have you been working on, and what will the real professional focus be for this summer to make sure those children are properly assessed going into the fall?
Well, we started working all year round with learning loss, and so teachers have been providing success plans and doing interventions and assigning paraprofessionals to work with children to really give them the boost that they need. But we know that that wasn't enough, and that some students still need that extra boost this summer. And so we are going to be having partnerships with Boston After School and Beyond that are enrichment opportunities for children, but also having academic components to that with our teachers assigned to some of those enrichment opportunities, which will be a lot of fun for our kids.
Sure.
And then we have 44 schools that are going to be having extended year programs where their teacher will actually teach them this summer.
Interesting. What do you do about kids who need it the most and maybe they don't show up?
Well, we are asking them to sign up. We're sending text. We have a wonderful website where people can get information and parents can get information. And we have our teachers working with the school leaders to ensure that students have a summer plan.
Right.
So they're checking in with them and trying to get them to come.
I saw that you had said it's really important for every single student this summer.
It is.
To have a plan.
Yes, it is absolutely essential.
What can parents be doing at home as well if they
Yeah.
feel as though I've really got to help this child catch up?
Yeah, so there are a lot of opportunities. Go to the library. So I know our libraries will be opening up soon. Read books with your children. There's lots online through the Google platforms that they should be accustomed to now this year. So parents have been introduced to some of these teaching tools already with our teachers, and so they can go on Seesaw and they can go and look for activities. There's just a whole lot of activities available this summer. Summer camps, the Y. But the best thing is go to our website at www.bostonpublicschools.org and /summer stuff, and you can get a lot more opportunities available.
What are you expecting the MCAS to show?
Well, I think, I don't make any secrets about my feelings about standardized tests in terms of individual student results. I do think that they give some good information for us at a district level around how we're implementing the standards. But this year, because some students are taking it remote, some are taking it in person, we know that there's been learning loss. I don't think that we can depend on the MCAS results this year, but looking forward to the formative assessments we'll give them upon their return this fall.
Yeah. And what about teachers? Have you had a problem with teacher retention? It was so difficult for teachers this year, often looking at a Zoom screen with children with the cameras shut off. What are teachers telling you about their return in the fall?
Well, our teachers are heroes here in Boston Public Schools. They just stood up and got the job done and worked with one another across classrooms, across schools, to really reinvent teaching. And so I'm so proud of them. And so I know that they're tired. They've really worked hard, as are our parents. I know many moms and dads out there and grandmas and aunties. I think that they're telling us that they want to have a break this summer, but they're eager also to come back this fall and see their students and have full classrooms.
If a parent came to you and said, I want my fourth grader to repeat the year, what would you say?
They have that right to have their child repeat the year. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say talk to your teacher, review the research on what that means long term, because the outcomes for children who are retained, they're negatively for getting a 4-year graduation degree. And so I think it's really important that we look at both the research and where the child is actually at. There's some mixed at early grades. It could benefit. So there are some parents who hold their children back, like for kindergarten, and wait a year just because of maturity or other reasons. And for that, some of the research shows that it matters. But as children get older into the middle and high school grades, and even the upper intermediate grades, it can be detrimental to them finishing high school.
Sure. If you had a third grader though, and you're worried, boy, they didn't get that foundation of the multiplication tables to move on to division, and I really want them to just repeat third grade, you're saying that you would not tell them they cannot do that?
I personally, in my 30 years of education, I still would not retain my own child. If they were behind. My own son had a difficult time reading. He did not read until 5th grade. And so I worked with them and worked with them and worked with them. And then once he got it, he got it. And it took a great teacher being patient with him. And so I would say stick with it and give them the boost and just work with your teachers, because being with that peer group really matters. And the psychological effects of being separated from your peer group, I think, are something to take in consideration when you're going to retain your child.
What's the plan for clinicians or social workers in the schools to assess where children are and help them with their mental health?
Well, because student voice matters in the Boston Public Schools, and listening to students all year tell us mental health is an issue. Hearing teachers tell us students are suffering, they turn off their cameras. We knew this year was going to have to be a year where we really invested in their mental health. So in our operating budget, we added a social worker at every single school. We added, and that's over 95 social workers. We added family liaisons in every single school, because parents need to be connected, and we need to have that connection for the children to thrive in school. And so what we are doing is creating a soft landing, so to speak, as they come into school. And during the summer, we'll have social workers as well, who provide support around mental health and assessing students and providing that one-to-one counseling that's needed if parents ask for it.
What's your advice as an educator for decades for parents to understand, as children ramp back up into a school year, the best thing to say to them?
Be patient. Any emotion your child's feeling is an okay emotion. Some may cry, some may be anxious, some may be scared.
Some might have separation anxiety.
Some may have separation anxiety, especially the younger ones, from their parents. And some of the older kids might be feeling awkward because of how it just feels. I know I felt awkward going to dinner with friends the other night, just like, how do you do this again? So I would say be patient and ask a lot of questions. Ask children. I did a wonderful thing with my children every evening. Ask them what was their high and what was their low of the day. And that was a way to kind of gauge if they had a great day, and maybe help and support where maybe they were not having such a good day on one certain thing.
Sure, but to convey to them, we can bounce back from this.
Oh, absolutely, and that you are strong and resilient and creative and beautiful. And they got through a pandemic. None of us have had to do that. And I think our children have been incredibly resilient with carrying such an unfair burden in their childhood.
What do you think the biggest challenge will be in the fall?
Well, if in fact they don't change the social distancing, that will be a huge challenge for us. So hopefully we will beat back this COVID to where we can release the social distancing. Otherwise, having everybody back, we may not have enough room. And so we have to then look at other facilities and other solutions, because right now we have about 50% of our students returning, and some of our schools are pretty full.
Sure, and I know the CDC had gone to 3 feet in school settings, right?
That helped.
That helped, but you're hoping by September that should go away if the numbers continue to collapse.
If we have it in a place that's healthy and the CDC guidance is suggesting that 3 feet is not needed any longer, that would be a huge relief to all of us.
Some superintendents have indicated that for some students, a certain percentage, remote learning worked for them, and they thrived in that environment. I know you sent out a survey to parents to get their feedback about continuing remote learning for some children. What's the feedback so far?
So we had about 3,000 family members return the survey. So, that's not a lot.
Sure.
You would think if you have 52,000, you'd have a little bit more response. So just getting that response tells me that there's not a lot. But there is a pretty good number of folks interested. And of those 3,000, we had about 36%, somewhere around 1,000 parents who are interested in being fully remote.
So let's say the social distancing is dropped and everybody is back. Will there be a remote learning center for those families who perhaps want to continue with remote learning?
There could possibly. We still don't know yet. We're waiting on the response from the state, which we anticipate would be favorable, but not certain. And then I need to bring it to school committee. That puts a very short time frame on it for us to try to stand up a virtual school. But if we can do it, we will, but we can't make any promises right now.
Sure. Continuing in that vein, Will there be snow days anymore?
I think there will be probably at least one snow day, the first snow day, because that's kind of fun. But you know, that's something that I actually make with the decision with the new mayor, because it involves a lot of other things with technology, infrastructure, roads, and
Sure.
so
That remains to be seen.
that remains to be seen.
And let me just ask, if you were sitting right here with one family, what would you say to them about how you felt this last year and what you want them to know moving forward?
I'm anticipating a joyful return where we'll all feel safe and everyone will feel welcomed, and we'll take the time with your child.
Superintendent Brenda Cassellius, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paula.